to introduce Moleen and Madziva from cohort 6. Give her a little welcome. Yes.
Yay, Moleen.
And Moleen has come all the way from Zimbabwe.
I can.
Do I need a mic?
Yeah.
What?
For my
No, you don't need it. He's gonna fall.
And apply many other routes to get here, but she has come to this country, as she mentioned herself, wondering what was she getting herself into, to do her degrees here in IT, is that right?
Software engineering, if we are going to be specific.
Okay. And what she is seeking to do is pretty unique and pretty revolutionary. She comes from a small village in Zimbabwe, Prescott, and she'll say the colonial aftermath of colonialism, left her people with lots of land, but little structure for moving forward and utilizing the resources that they have. So her role, whether she saw it at the beginning or not, was to get her own education and to be able to help her brothers and sisters go to college. And achieve their degrees and begin to have an impact and begin to bring things back to their home community. And that's what her intention is to have her community be a model for similar communities in the fourth forest countries in the world, with a horrible political structure, and to try to work with her people to change their view of what their life is all about. That it's not there, but it's been submerged, and it has an opportunity to break through to a new level of commitment and awareness in a way that could be an incredible model for other developing countries, other communities like the Chad. So I'll turn it over to Moleen to go with it.
Thank you. And if you can just hold the mic for me just for another minute.
Sure.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate your sacred presence. I would like to request that you help me to welcome my ancestors, as well as to show them some gratitude for how far I've come. So for the men in the room, if you can put your hands together, kind of like this, creating a cave, as it were, for the air inside to behold. This is going to be reaching out to my masculine ancestors, requesting them to continue to protect and to provide. For the women, we are going to have our hands like this, so that when we clap, also the air that's within is going to create the kind of sound that will be heard. And that's really to request that they can continue to provide inner joy. So when I begin, we can all begin to clap. And when I stop, that means that I feel their presence, and you can also stop. Thank you. I love you very much. So welcome. My name is Moleen, cohort 6. Today I am going to be taking your time to just share some information about my journey so far, as I am preparing for my PhD dissertation focused on centering on abundance as a guide to sustainability resilience, and thrivability in a developing community. The picture you see here is the picture of my favorite wild fruit of all time, which grows quite abundantly during the rainy season in Zimbabwe. And pretty much in Macheke, we are known as Majanje country. It tastes really good. So just a little bit about my background. I was born in Zimbabwe and raised in a small community named Macheke. I am one of 7 children. My dad has since passed away, and my mom is still alive, 67 years old, full of wisdom in life, and continuing to guide us. My first language is Shona, the only country in the whole world that speaks this language. We actually are coming from a Bantu lineage, so there may be some other languages that sound quite familiar, but we're the only ones that have that language. Now, it could be a dying language if people like me don't do our work. My education is actually the post-colonial education system, and a lot of that has not been changed yet, given the experiences that are going on. I just kind of want to give you a little bit of a piece of a story, just so that you can get a sense of why I am so passionate and why I'm here. I have to read this just so that the emotions don't take over what we are trying to do. Not that I'm afraid of my emotions. In fact, I embrace them, but we are trying to get this moving. I was 4 years old when my family's village homestead in Shoshe, southern Rhodesia, was destroyed by the British settler soldiers that were fighting against indigenous African freedom activists such as my mom and dad. It must have been after 6 p.m. or so on a 1979 day. The sun was quickly setting as if to run away from being a possible witness. My brothers were playing outside in the dimness of the African dusk, and the rest of us were in the thatched kitchen putting supper together. All of a sudden, loud gunshots came through the thick woods. Then plenty more bullets rained on our village and on our homestead, starting a fire on the thatched roof of our kitchen. The kitchen was no longer a good option to take refuge, so everyone scrambled to now a dangerous courtyard outside, crawling and seeking safety. The chickens were frustrated by the noise and began to scurry around. Everyone, well, almost everyone, managed to creep up behind the anthill on the edge of our residence, enduring the cuts and bruises from the pebbles on the yard. My mother noticed I was missing from the cluster, and without a thought, sneaked under the shower of the bullets to come and get me where I was hunched by the broken door of the burning kitchen. Shortly after, the roof fell with threatening intensity. I could have died in that moment. I don't know and don't even recall how I responded to the events that led to that night. I was a child after all. My mother said I was very brave and filled with the courage of an old soul. The smolder held the night captive, and it populated everyone's state of mind. My most vivid memory of the morning after was the earth covered in bullet shells, brown and bronze in color. My father knew that staying in this village was no longer safe. So once dawn broke, he made the tough decision to move the family. It took no time to pile up in Austin, our old van. As we drove down the dust road and across over the little thirsty stream, it was hot and stuffy in the van. But that journey to refuge was one of the most significant trips I've ever been on. I was leaving behind my first childhood memories. Behind me now was the pool by the river. Kotu, our faithful dog, the lovely scent of wildflowers, the courtyard that had been home to a lot of our play. Behind was the only place I knew as home, the place that had offered a lot of asylum to many freedom fighters that were passing through. Behind the van was old air, and it could only have been in everyone's hope that the air ahead was fresh with the pursuit of freedom. So Macheke is located on the southeast side of the country, about an hour drive from the capital city of Harare. So for those of you who will be taking a visit with me, you need to know this map. I'm going to just share a few pictures that I've taken recently. If I had an hour, which I think originally I was slotted for an hour, I could have shown you more, but just a few faces and images that represent who I am and my journey. The first one, after this story that I just told, was very important to me. Recently, as I began my research, I was privileged to have a long tea time shared with a white farmer that is still in Macheke that witnessed everything that we went through. So embracing difficult terrain is my friend Jenny, who is a super leader in this work, is something that I'm working on. We have wisdom in Macheke. We also smile a lot. Is that obvious? The essence of being human. I'll take the moment to read a poem that sits with me. I'm making my shoulders strong for the young to stand upon, stepping lightly on the backs of those who hold me up. It's a chain of life unending, ever new and ever bending. Grateful is the heart for the chance to be alive. I'm sure deep passion is something you probably can say when you think about me. If I can say it in two sentences, I refused to carry the poverty consciousness on all dimensions. However, I've also realized that while I can figure out ways to avoid poverty, perhaps my community needs guidance. And hence I am answering the call. So when it comes to research, I have a question, and I'm working on answering it. What is poverty? Where does abundance lie in a so-called poor community? And what is required in order for a poor community to achieve sustainability, resilience, and go further into thrivability? Thanks, Abigail, for sharing this with me. Made it on the slides. So this is, I'm not going to talk too much about this, but it's talking a little bit about what we are thinking as we go through the phases. So you can imagine I've been through the survival mode. And we're working now on repairing, which is what's going to get us to sustainability. But why can't we actually rebound, right? To rebuild our resilience, because that's where we're coming from. And perhaps game on. So in looking at my research, I've had a lot of help from my mentors and core faculty in really thinking about what methodology I should be looking into. Participatory action research made it on the list because there is no way that I could have left out my community from participating in our own work. Ethnography pretty much just called for the ethnic story to be told. It is too important to be left out. My methods are going to be using focus groups, interviews, and observation. And I'm so privileged that I actually get to visit the village of Sauri in Kenya, which is one of the UN Millennium Villages, this summer, to be able to observe how others are working on community development. I had to put my practicum slide up here because I'm really proud of it. So what I've actually thought about is, instead of me thinking on my own about what solution we need to create on the ground as part of my practicum, I've actually decided to use a bioregional and biocultural assessment tool that the high school students in Macheke can actually use. The students then would be encouraged to create a solution for any aspect of their place, we're talking Macheke, or their culture, our Shona heritage, that they are concerned about. So yes, we are going to do something on the ground, but it's going to be in participation. My literature review has been long, wide, deep, as Pramod might want to say. I've had a lot of long days looking into overviews of the current economic situation in Africa. It's not enough just to look at my village. And then using Zimbabwe as a case study. Macheke is hardly documented. If you Googled it, probably what you may see is the Macheke Sustainability Project, which I have founded, a very profound initiative that is trying to work on this work on how we can lift ourselves up from poverty. I also looked extensively at the IMF policy. For those that don't know, this is the International Monetary Fund that actually created the so-called Structural Adjustment Program. And this was executed in any African country that was willing after their colonial period was over. I've also looked at the overview of the UN Millennium Development Goals, and this is actually the parent program that then created the UN Millennium Villages, with that village that I'm going to be visiting this summer. Overview of the sustainable community development. At this point, I would just like to take a moment and read a quote from one of my, I would say, distant mentors, a scholar who has been working on something that touches me. We live in a world that promotes a mindset of scarcity. That mindset eclipses our experience of our own wholeness and sufficiency and turns our attention to wanting what we don't have. Consumer culture depends on people living in fear of scarcity, feeling inadequate, empty, and deficient, so that we think we need to acquire and accumulate more just to be okay. We are swimming in messages that tell us that we are not enough, that there isn't enough, and that more of anything and everything is so much better. In viewing data for those that have led my way in community development, I've actually decided that the way that I would like to view my community is that it should be environmentally sound, economically productive, and socially just. But of course, I extrapolate. Everybody probably knows about this because Pramod pushes it down our throat first year. Just really trying to seek the balance. Maybe I could use the impact of this one. But it stayed with me, so thank you. My theoretical framework may surprise some of you. I am actually going the management theory route. And here, as we are facing towards sustainability, the new thinking is that we can just shift that whole bottom line idea to saying we are concerned about balancing the economy, the ecology, and the people. But I am also suggesting that we should actually have 4 bottom lines of prosperity. We need to embrace our spirituality. Sacred economics really talking again about some of the things that Lynn Twist has been talking about, the history of money, and revealing how this system of money has alienated and caused a lot of competition and scarcity. But it is time to look at that great opportunity to transition to a more connected, ecological, and sustainable way of being. So when I'm looking at Macheke, I've been facing some challenges, and I wanted to share those with you. The locals hardly have been a part of the solution. Education has not evolved to better serve us. There are remnants of poverty consciousness because we still carry the colonial scars. Development policies tend to be more economy-centric, and certainly decades of environmental damage or neglect make for this challenge. But guess what? We have opportunities. Looking and centering on abundance. And when I talk about abundance, I'm referring to wisdom and fortune. Some of the areas that I see abundance, the indigenous peoples of my community, we are not poor. Wunu, as some of you may know, is Ubuntu, an African ethic that talks about the essence of being human. I am because we are. Balance, compassion, justice. We are not poor. Fertile soils, the rich natural environment, everywhere you turn, there are majanges, we have wild animals, we have life. We are not poor. The African reawakening is a great opportunity. We have the right to be on this planet. I am not poor. When I talk about spirituality, it's really about our sacred existence on this planet. Happiness. No longer are we going to be focusing on the GDP as a measurement of our progress. We are not poor. Love, questions, concerns, suggestions? Yes.
First of all, thank you so much. You're a force of nature, and all I can say is people will have to look out because they're going to make some changes. There was a slide you put up that I really liked, which showed stages of sustainability, thrivability. What is that from? Is that your framework, or is that something that you...
No, that's not mine. Thank God. Somebody else is thinking about this, which I guess Abigail can help me out.
I shared it. It comes from thrivable.net, and there actually is a collaborative of people who are writing a book together about thrivability as a new frame for sustainability work, and Jean Russell is the main person involved.
Thrivability.net?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's the, or it could be .org, but it's Jean Russell if you look up.
Is Andre, I think it's thrivable.net.
I'm not sure if he is or not. He might be. It's a collectively written book.
Yeah. I think it's thrivable.net, according to the little tag on the bottom.
Yeah, thrivable, but yeah.
Jean Russell.
So you are expecting this question, right? Tell us about you were not speaking this language when we first met you here 2-3 years ago. What is going on in your own process of embracing, moving towards this view? What is the internal process? Could you share it a little bit?
Yeah. So I guess I could be a good research subject for Abigail.
Yes.
So I listen. Yes.
Yes, I'm absolutely deeply delighted and happy that you have included spirituality. And I want to know if this is something that you brought, or that you had inside and then you realized you had it inside.
Good question. I am a sacred existence. So I didn't have to come this far, but I carried it with me. And I appreciate everybody for cradling me and holding me close on my journey. Right.
This isn't a question, but I thought this was such a beautiful moment. But I was hoping that you could talk to the larger group about talking about would you talk about this in our cohort thing, the boy, your speech? And I think that would be really something to add as a framework for everybody to understand.
Sure. So really quick, in November, I actually traveled back to Macheke and began my research and pretty much having conversations with many different walks of life within my village. And that also included me addressing students at various schools, including our high school in Macheke. And as I spoke with the students about sustainability and moving from the poverty consciousness and shifting in what we want to call abundance consciousness, the headmaster then requested that the head boy of the school, who is also a student in the school, come forth and offer a word of gratitude for having someone as marvelous as me visiting and addressing the students, because they hardly ever have any visitors. So this young man, and I guess I would have to say he might be 17 years old or thereabout, comes to the podium and he's shaking. And I could tell that he is going through it. And the first thing he says, addressing the rest of his fellow students and teachers that were standing behind him, he says, beginning today, I am no longer poor. Moleen has come this way to tell me that I am no longer poor. And he went on to talk about the abundance that's around, the work that needed to be done, what they can do as young citizens in our community. That's the story. Roy.
Hey, that's great. You remember my name. That's wonderful. I missed a little piece of your presentation. I apologize. But I have a quick comment and then a question. The word unu that you put up there is actually used in Jamaican dialect, and it means collective or togetherness or all of you. The question I have is, how do you explain what you mean by spirituality? Looking at it from the Zimbabwean context.
Yeah, so pretty much very simple. We don't complicate things in Macheke. Within my Shona culture, it just means sacred existence. That's really it.
But you're still confounding me. I mean, what does that mean?
Oh, okay. I'll take it to another level. It just really means I am here. I am enough. I am capable of making a difference. There is something, let me show you this. There's something in my feet. As I walk this journey, I am going to leave a mark. Compassion, justice, creativity. So Hunu is an essence of our spirituality. When my ancestors created the concept of Hunu, they were just trying to describe in our own oral tradition culture, to leave room, right, for us to be able to change it as we go along, that we have a right to be on this planet. But we are also responsible for creating that compassion. Is that all right?
I made a board and there's a footprint made by clay because in my country they would stop.
Oh, where are you from?
Czech Republic,
Ah,
small country,
yes.
always run by somebody else.
Sure.
I couldn't.
I connect.
I have a question. So, and we've talked about this before, but this is complicated in the fact that as much as you are an insider, you are also an outsider. And we've talked that, like, how are you now thinking about where that is? Does it influence your research or how you see things or how they see things or maybe I didn't know, like, how has it been so far? Because you did go to Michike in November or something, yeah.
Yes. Great question. And I think I've answered this before, but I will do it again.
Yeah.
So every day when I say my prayers, I always thank my Creator for the privilege to travel. It's not everybody who gets that opportunity, which is why my travels are a lot about inquiry, learning, and growing my sense of spirituality. I actually gain by being a child of the world. When I come back home, that embrace that I get, where have you been? Go do the dishes. Okay, let's go and fetch Majanja in the wild. There isn't too much of a disconnect when the love is deep-seated. It's not up here. It's in our feet.
I think listening to her, the process of that, this idea of outsider, insider, we've been discussing from yesterday and, all the time. It is basically a very much industrial scientific idea, but in her case, what is happening here, I think, let's see whether she likes it, is the insider going outside to come back inside. Without that outside, her coming inside might have been incomplete. Look at Gandhi's process is exactly that's what happened. He had to leave India, be the lawyer in England and work in South Africa to see what is India. Otherwise, he probably would have been just a lawyer. So this is an amazing process.
Yes.
That's the hero's journey.
Yes, that's the hero journey as we understand in our religion. Yeah.
And just to add to that, beautiful, I actually like that, Pramo.
Insider going outside in order to come inside, yes.
Yeah. Just to add to that, James, sorry I'm ignoring you. Because of our colonial history, it is so important for me to live, to see what these people are about. So while I chose America because I think it's more fun and we get cute clothes, I really could have also gone to England and gained the same thing. I needed to leave in order for me to be full. And when I look around the room at the people I love so much, my friends, my mentors, my life would not be full without you. Thank you.